Mental illness. Depression, most widespread in the population. Okay? 1 in 5 people over their lifetime is going to have a depressive or anxiety illness. 1 in 5 people. It's a lot. Okay, so plain old depression, we're concerned with well-being. That's the self-esteem we're most concerned with in depression. However, in depresculinity, we might also be concerned about confidence only insofar as a guy who's confident also expresses himself in a masculine way, too. In other words, the self-esteem called confidence, women can have it too, but in you as a man, it aids and abets the expression of your masculinity. It is a fatherly emotion, even though women can have it too, of course. Does that make sense? Confidence makes an easy conduit emotionally for the expression of masculinity.
Even if she's a confident woman, can't necessarily teach her son or bestow the son those masculine traits.
Correct.
But you're also saying at the same time, if you have a real confident mother,
yes,
that will trigger his masculinity, even though she's not. I guess I want to better understand that.
Okay, yeah. Call this maybe 10% of the situation, not 100%. Okay? In other words, being a confident guy emotionally goes quite a way to help you feel masculine and behave in a masculine way. But it does not at all, in and of itself, constitute all of masculinity. And that's why a mom can't teach her son how to be a man. Can't be done. In fact, even if she read a book on it and dressed up in army fatigues, took him out in the woods and beat him up, there'd still be something in the boy's mind that would be like, this is taboo. This is not the way it's supposed to work. And he wouldn't be doing that consciously or logically. Something would not work. He'd act out. He'd run away and say, no, I don't want to do it. It's taboo. Something wrong with it. Okay. So plain old depression, this is the problem. And maybe to a degree, the beliefs you carry around with you, negative pessimistic beliefs in your higher brain, where you store your data. But in depresculinity, what we're saying is, yes, this is going on as a problem. There's an emotional problem, mainly with well-being, and there's a masculinity problem. Depresculinity is depression and masculinity problem. Got it? Got a spectrum here for you. I call this a quantum spectrum of negative emotion for a very specific reason. It's not meant to be woo-woo or markety type stuff. Quantum in physics means what? What is quantum physics, in essence, based on? And quantum physics resolves that by using spectra. Waves have a spectrum to them, right? Like a rainbow. Well, what if there were a quantum psychology? What would that be like? Well, it would be having the ability to both categorize or label someone. For example, we call somebody a depressed person. Is that bad or wrong to do? No. But why does it make sense for us to do that? If you can't label a behavior, how are you going to do anything about it? If you can't label it. And yet at the same time, wouldn't it be judgmental, prejudiced, and unfair to say, all depressed people are the same? Yeah, it would. It'd be unfair and inaccurate, because all depressed people aren't the same. They have some commonalities, but they're not identical twins. And that's where a waveform helps us by saying, just like a fingerprint. If you've ever done chemistry, like mass spectroscopy and and all the kinds of, all I can think of is spectroscopy. It's a way of like identifying, like, did you ever see CSI, right? And they get a substance and they stick it in a bag and they send it to the lab. Well, what the lab does is it runs a spectrograph of the substance that has a fingerprint that says, yes, it's blood, or yes, it's hair. You know, they identify the substance by a spectrum. Physically, well, what we can do by using spectra in all of our methods here is to both respect one's individuality and say your mood fingerprint, or your masculinity fingerprint, if you will, is going to be different from every other man's on earth. And yet, to be able to label you as having work to do with women, or having work to do on your career, or having trouble with approaching women, or having trouble with your boundaries, for example, to be able to give those labels to you is very, very useful to chart progress you could be making. Yet we're still saying you're a complete individual. We're not labeling you in a prejudiced way. And that would be quantum psychology, to be able to do that. So a quantum spectrum of negative emotion is just saying all negative emotions can be represented on this spectrum. On the one end is anger, and on the other end is anxiety. And anger's identical twin is, I already said it, sadness or depression. Okay? If you're angry, then you're sad. If you're sad, then you're angry. If you ever see a person cry, they might tell you they're sad, or they might tell you they're so angry that they could cry, or did cry. Okay? So give me a word for a negative emotion. Some random negative emotion you can think of. You don't need the mic for this.
Bored.
What's that?
Bored.
Bored? Okay, so is bored more angry or more anxious? For you? Okay, interesting. So it's so unique to you that the way you define the word in your lexicon, you're going to have a unique fingerprint to your emotional spectrum that you build for yourself and label. For me, when I feel bored, I'm a little frustrated about that. I'm angry. I don't like being bored. I'm frustrated. Feeling betrayed. Is feeling betrayed more scary and fearful, or more angering? For me, it's more angering. Yeah. So I would put the word betrayed maybe somewhere in here. Beyond annoyed, probably beyond pissed off. Maybe not quite to rage. Oh, okay, you feel that? You feel the rage? All right. How about another one?
Panicked or freaked out.
Yeah, how about freaked out or panicked? Is that more scary and anxious, or more angering and frustrating? Scary and anxious. So I'd put panic for me probably beyond regretful, definitely beyond cautious, beyond regretful, beyond creeped out, pretty near terrified, or maybe just slightly beyond terrified would be panic for me. And where I put my label would be different from where you put all your labels. It's a difference in our emotional fingerprint, if you will. Does that make sense? That way, we can label this invisible stuff called emotion, and yet respect that you are an individual with your own individual emotional fingerprint in how you label this for yourself. Okay? This is going to be useful later on. This is out of MindOS, by the way, this concept. And while it's useful to look at anxiety as a whole, as a set of conditions that we cover in the Masculine Intelligence Valor product, formerly the Attack Anxiety program, which also addresses approach anxiety with women. We're going to largely stick to the masculine roots of confidence that rest in the paternal, fatherly nature of masculinity itself, okay? And that's what I had just said earlier, that confidence is an emotion that women can have too. It's a type of self-esteem women can have too. But for us particularly, it's extra useful and helpful as an emotion. It helps our masculinity get expressed. In fact, remember I gave you that, that model of the three brains as being like a car engine. You have a spark plug, a gas tank, and oil tank, and then the engine casing to harvest all the work from the exploding gas. Well, your masculinity is like the spark. Confidence is definitely like gasoline. If self-esteem were petroleum, confidence would be gasoline, and well-being would be oil to soothe the engine, to cool it. Your mother cools the engine. Your father gives you the gasoline. See how that works? And we all need both a source of mothering and a source of fathering in life, whether it's from one person or various people. First boundary diagram here. So we talked about this positive kind of emotional energy called self-esteem. Its opposite is called stress. Okay? Stress is negative emotional energy. Self-esteem is positive emotional energy. There's a barrier between the stresses in your life and your self-esteem, and that is called your boundary. And we talk all about boundaries in the Mind OS program, MI growth program. If you think to aspects of your life that are stressful, does that stand to reason that stress is negative emotions? Like, think about a stressful workplace. If I walked into an empty office building with no people in it, is it a stressful environment? Really? Why? How? Okay. Okay. That I would identify as being more coming from your inside as a need that you have. You need people, and it doesn't have people. I'm talking about feeling like the stress is coming at me. What I'm saying is usually stress, the source of stress is other human beings. It's their negative emotions. That's what's stressful. If your marriage is stressful, it's because the other person has negative emotions, and you don't know what to do with it. If you have a stressful workplace, it's because your boss, coworkers have negative emotions, and they're all finding you a convenient dumping ground for them or something like that. Or they're scapegoating you. Wesley Gibson's boss in the movie Wanted. Yeah, it's her that is the source of his stress in that environment. Your first line defense is saying no. It's having a boundary, saying no. Okay? What if stress manages to get into you? Okay? Well, just like there are two types of self-esteem, well-being and confidence, positive emotion, there are two types of stress.